My name is Nicole Johnston. I am the Aurora City Council member for Ward 2, which is Northeast Aurora. I'd love to recognize Councilmember Marcano. He's joining us today from Ward 4, and he and I are sponsors for the largest campaign finance reform that the city of Aurora has ever had. So we officially launched it this week. Councilmember Marcano presented it to the Management and Finance Committee meeting yesterday, and it is moving to study session. But it's really important. This is the 6th community meeting that has taken place on campaign finance reform. We're still open to feedback and getting that community input, but we think it's important all along the way to let folks know what we're working on. So I just want to give a little background of why we're here. This is the way that it's important when we do huge legislation like this reform, that it's not just coming from a council member or even 2 council members, but that it's community driven. We have a constituent who's joining us today, Mr. Dale Nichols, if you can wave. Mr. Dale Nichols actually comes from working at the Secretary of State's office and has really been a community expert, I'm going to say, on tracking community or campaign finance reports, our election system of how it has been, and has been really passionate about being involved in changes that we need to make for the city of Aurora. So Dale did approach Councilmember Marcano and I think in January, maybe about a month after Councilmember Marcano was sworn in, and thought, hey, with this new council, maybe there's an opportunity to really do some big reform. So we joined. There's some other, we have some other constituents, Ward 4 constituents. Linda, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's important to share that we have constituents that are part of this and are really, that it's an important effort for you. And, you know, we follow this co-governance model of reaching out to organizations, to constituents, to the community when we're bringing something forward this monumental. So I'm going to give kind of the beginning of the presentation, and it'll list some of the organizations. Owen, if you don't mind putting that up. And then I am tag teaming with my partner, Owen Perkins from Clean Slate Now, action.org, and he is going to also be presenting, and then we'll take questions at the end. So we wanted to start off, like I said, who's kind of part of this coalition besides Councilmember Marcano and I sponsoring it. We have the Campaign Legal Center, we have Clean Slate Now Action, we have Colorado Common Cause, Colorado Working Family Party, Democracy Enter Colorado, DSA Colorado, Indivisible, CD6, Our Revolution Metro Denver, and PDA Colorado. Colorado Common Cause was the nonpartisan organization behind the state reform. So while we don't have any limits or a lot of guidelines in the city of Aurora, the voters voted to have much more transparency and accountability for our state elected leaders. And recently there were reforms to pass it on to our county commissioner positions as well. So we have lots of great work. And then of course, Clean Slate Now Action was very instrumental in the reform for the city of Denver and city of Lakewood. Next slide, please. So why do campaign finance laws matter? Why are we putting all of this energy into this change? Obviously, there's lots of issues. Well, we think that's kind of this cornerstone of the election, the campaign process, of who ends up representing the community. Currently, as we've referenced before, the city of Aurora does not have any campaign finance limits. And the disclosure, I was able to make a little change last year, but before that, basically the disclosure of who's contributing, what amounts, were at the same time ballots were already out. And now campaigns are becoming much more sophisticated. We have social media, advertising, we had TV commercials at the last election. And we feel it's important for voters to know who's paying for that and who's supporting about that. So obviously more accountability means less corruption and more trust in our Aurora politics. And no one should be able to buy a city council seat. It shouldn't be, if you raise the most money, you have the most, biggest chance to win. It should be about, the ground game, your message, what you're delivering to constituents should be the most important thing on winning the election. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just gonna tee this off for you, my friends. So Owen, like I said, has really worked on this area regionally in the state, has partnered with folks throughout the country, and has been a subject matter expert of best practices of what's been happening around the state of Colorado, as well as the United States. So he's going to present, and then I will end with talking about what the actual ordinance does, and we'll take questions from there. So Owen, why do we need meaningful campaign finance reform for Aurora?
Well, thanks, Councilwoman.
Oh, and I'm so sorry, Owen. I just want to give, I guess I did give that special shout out to Dale that he was instrumental in getting this started. But Dale, did you have any words to share before we continue?
Well, I don't want to take up a lot of time. At the end of my career at the Secretary of State's office, I was working principally in campaign finance matters. And sometime after I retired in 2016 or 2017, I began to notice some inadequacies in Aurora's campaign finance ordinances, and began to think and to speak in city council meetings about how that might be corrected. But it didn't seem like there was enough political support at that time to move forward. But in 2019, there was an explosion in the level of campaign finance contributions, particularly large contributions, many of them from outside of Aurora and outside of Colorado. And it began to seem more urgent, so I began putting together a list of what I thought was needed and put my first draft together beginning of January, shortly after New Year's. At that time, Arnie Schultz, who's in this meeting now, contributed some important support and feedback. And from there, Nicole and Juan got involved, and Owen and many others. The one thing I want to stress here, I think, is that this has been, from the beginning, driven principally by residents of Aurora. There are people involved now who are not Aurora residents, mainly because I needed the kind of support that could come from trained legal professionals, not just duffers like me. But this is an Aurora-centered and Aurora native initiative, and I think that's important to bring up. Owen, why don't you take it from there?
Okay, great, thanks. Major thanks to Dale for writing an incredible comprehensive draft that takes on so much in campaign finance reform. And, when we ask why do we need it, it's something that it's no secret there's increasing distrust of politicians right now, and lack of faith in our whole political system. There was a great study just a couple years ago from a joint study from the George Bush Institute and the University of Pennsylvania Biden Center that found 8 in 10 Americans seriously concerned about the condition of democracy in our country. And the overwhelming majority of them believe democracy is getting weaker. And the biggest reason they had for that was big money in politics. Incidentally, the second, tied for second reasons were discrimination and racism. But big money in politics, people, I think, rightfully recognize as one of the biggest issues that we're facing. Because whatever your favorite issue is, the thing you'd most like to work on and see change on, and you can picture it right now, whatever that might be, whether it's healthcare or the environment or education, in all of those, every issue you can think of, we're being held back by special interests who are spending enormous amounts of money to change the playing field and favor themselves and elect politicians who will do their bidding. So we're trying to get a system that keeps politicians out of everybody's pocket um, and keeps them indebted to their constituents and not to special interests at all. Right now, it feels like we've got a situation. We're supposed to have one citizen, one vote in the United States, but it feels like it's often more like $1, one vote, and that we're auctioning off legislative seats for political office. So, the Supreme Court has played its role in Citizens United and other decisions. They declared that money is speech. I happen to disagree with that, but if I take them on their premise that money is speech, then we have to answer the question of how do people of modest means have their speech protected? Because things like Citizens United protected big money, big speech, but how do the rest of us get ours protected? There's a group in Colorado Ethics Watch, who did a report a few years ago looking at municipal elections and found, this is one of the big concerns. This is what we want to overcome. They found that the voters didn't have any idea which candidates were supported by special interests until after the election. They saw corporations and businesses having a much greater influence in local elections than they're allowed to at the state or federal level. They're really limited at the state and federal level, but they hadn't been so much at the local level. So these things have to change if we're going to have open, transparent, and informed elections in the future. That was the conclusion of Colorado Ethics Watch, and that's what drives these kind of reforms in Aurora. Just to look at this idea of trust, does the government represent the people? Princeton University did this study recently, and they came up with this chart here that they feel like is the ideal chart for public opinion's influence on public policy. And the figure at the bottom, the axis on the bottom, is percent of public approval. And you would think if something has 80% public approval, then it should have something like an 80% likelihood of that policy going into action through legislatures. If it's 100%, you'd think there'd be a 100% chance. If there's no approval from the public, you'd think there'd be no chance of it passing. What Princeton found out was that it's really a flat line. It doesn't change with public opinion. It doesn't change at all. The public opinions has no influence. Every bill going before Congress has roughly a 30% chance of passing, regardless of how the public feels about it. What changes is when you get the elite representation involved, when that upper 10% of the population by income and by wealth weighs in on a subject, then the odds start changing for policy to change. If 100% of that elite top 10% believe in something, you've got now about a 60% likelihood that those policies will be enacted. So double the rate for the rest of us. But for we the people, it feels like corruption is legal in America. And that's one of the things we try to overcome with campaign finance reform, to eliminate corruption, eliminate the appearance of corruption, and the possibility of corruption. So, one of the reasons the businesses like to contribute to politicians so much is that they get incredible return on investment for doing so. The Journal of Law and Politics determined they get a 22,000% return on investment for investing in politicians. And the way that return shows up is in favorable legislation that allows them, loopholes, tax loopholes, breaks. I think medication, prescription medicine right now is a great example of something where we all know we're paying outrageous prices compared to the rest of the world. The public thinks we should be able to get medication at the same rate as the rest of the world, but the politicians won't change that because they're getting so much money coming from big pharma invested in their campaigns and to protect their seats in their legislatures, that they won't take on the big special interests. The Supreme Court's decisions earlier this century resulted in $3 billion of new money coming into the 2016 election. So this is money that wasn't allowed in until Supreme Court decisions like Citizens United opened the door for it. And that's why we're really seeing this huge rush of money right now. In the United States, I think the 500 biggest companies contributed about $4 billion in the 2016 election, and they got back something like $5 trillion in perks and benefits and return on their investment. So an incredible investment for them, and that's why they do it. They don't do it for fun or for charity. They're doing it for the bottom line. The public is against this unlimited spending and contributing to campaigns across the political spectrum. 70–80% of the public thinks we need to have contribution limits. Aurora does not have contribution limits right now. And to look at a couple examples of how this shows up in Aurora, the last election cycle we had about $1.7 million contributed to candidates, about another $1 million contributed to committees other than candidate committees. So a total of $2.7 million contributed in the last election cycle. That's an average of about $7 per resident of Aurora. A publicly financed election system, we figure would cost somewhere between $1.44 and $2.88 per resident of Aurora, but that's another discussion for another time. But it is something to think about: is what is a clean election worth to us? Are we willing to pay a couple dollars a year to invest in citizen-owned elections as opposed to elections where the special interests hold all the cards? The big money donations in Aurora in the last 4 cycles, 2011, 13, 15, and 17, there were a total of 26 donations of $5,000 or more. In the last cycle alone, there were 99 contributions of $5,000 or more. So you can see we're on pace to start getting out of control. We probably are out of control and on pace to get worse. The largest contribution in the past, where there are no contribution limits for Aurora, was $25,000 before 2019. In 2019, that went up to $100,000 to a council candidate, or no, a mayor candidate. We saw contributions in dark money forms from independent expenditure groups, giving money in a way that got to candidates, to a handful of candidates, $400,000 from one corporate donor to a dark money group that then filtered that money to the candidates. So we're really trying to avoid that pattern that is becoming increasingly worrisome in Aurora. And just a close look at the contributions in a given race. I don't want to identify which race this is, but a 2019 ward race for city council. And these are contributions that would be eliminated with the reforms that we're going to talk about tonight that are being proposed. So these are contributions that are over the proposed limits and that are coming from corporations and business entities and unions that would be left out of the picture in the future. That was the first candidate. There were a handful there. This is the second candidate, candidate B. And this is quite a bit more substantial, the contributions that come in. You can try to take a quick look as I fly by here of who these special interests are. Realty, energy, some unions, property, apartment associations, Comcast is always involved, Marriott International, on and on and on. All these contributions that would be out of this one ward race amount to $38,000 for 1 year between 2 candidates that would disappear with this new legislation. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, but those are the ones that would go away. And when you see all these realtors and apartment companies and developers, you start to get a picture of how the special interests start to affect policy through their contributions to campaigns. If you're somebody who believes in affordable housing, are you going to get that by electing a candidate who is bankrolled by real estate developers and by real estate PACs and similar organizations? When you can take those special interests out of the picture and just encourage candidates to rely on their constituents and on individual donors, you get a lot more accountability for the values of the people that these elected officials are there to represent. A quick look also at what that big money ends up actually representing. It ends up representing the views predominantly of white, male, and wealthy members of the population. That's the donor class. Right now, this is again a few years old, but it hasn't changed that much as we'd like it to. Donors giving $5,000 or more across the country who are white make up 94%. The white people make up 94% of the donor class across the country. That's not obviously reflective of the population. It is reflective of the elected officials, which were 90% white at that time. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you get 94% white donors electing 90 and 90% white elected officials. But the population is dramatically different. Nearly 40% people of color at the time of this study. And what we want to see is elections where those elected do a better job of representing, actually reflecting the values and the actual people that they are representing. So these kind of major reforms have been going on all over the country. Dozens of cities and counties and states have recently passed major reforms along the lines of what's being proposed in Aurora. And a couple right neighboring in our backyard. This was a Denver initiative that passed 2 years ago and went into effect this year. Very similar. It bans corporations from donating directly to campaigns as they are currently banned at the state and federal level. It lowers contribution limits. They went from, say, $1,000 for a council member down to $400 for a council member, which is the same as a state legislature, $400 contribution max. They have the public financing with a 9-to-1 match on small dollar donations to candidates who opt in. That's a big piece of the Denver plan. And they also require the disclosure of dark money. So those are 4 big elements that were passed in Denver a couple of years ago. And then last year in Lakewood, they passed, I think, one of the most comprehensive pieces of legislation I've ever seen for campaign finance reform. Big things like lowering their high contribution limits to also be on a par with the state. So, down from $2,500 for a council candidate to $400. They banned contributions from corporations and labor unions, banned anonymous contributions. That's very important, I think. Required disclaimers identifying who's paying for electioneering. So any of the ads have to say paid for by so-and-so. They added fines that were up to double the amount contributed. So if you think $1,000 contribution, typically the fines are something like $50. But when you start to say $1,000 contribution is going to be fined $2,000, that becomes a significant drawback as opposed to just the cost of doing business. And they went even higher in terms of what the city clerk could do for non-candidate committees, make those kind of errors. So at this point, I'm going to ask Nicole to jump in and take a specific look at exactly what the Aurora reforms are set up to do.
Thank you, Owen, for that overview on the importance of why we need this. I'm going to dive in on what the actual ordinance does. It is over 20 pages. I will say that. We had a couple of pages before, but I think it's really important to have the details, to have it defined, what we're covering, so a campaign can go in and say, what do we do over, this situation or that situation? Councilmember Marcano actually had the idea, and we'll incorporate that for people who are running for office, just having a 1-page summary of the highlights, and I'm going to be giving you the highlights today. But I wanted to say, as we're doing this reform, we're taking it seriously, and it is detailed, and some may say too detailed, but I think when you're seeking information as a candidate or someone who wants to run, the more information, the better. So highlighting, obviously on here, we have new limits, or we have limits, I should say, on campaign contributions that we didn't have before. We have stronger reporting requirements to stop that secret spending. We have a new software system that we're going to be implementing. So it's going to be very user-friendly, online. Once this pandemic hopefully gets through, people will still be able to go to the city clerk's office and get paper copies if you need to, but it's really important that the information is accessible online and user-friendly, so we have that. And then also that stronger oversight and enforcement. Right now, if someone doesn't have a report in time, it's $50 a day. Am I correct on that? Head nods, yes. So when you're looking at, you know, an industry putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to defeat candidates, and they may not want that reported, who's behind that? $50 a day that we have right now is a drop in the bucket and doesn't dissuade anyone. So we've really tried to address those issues as well. Next slide, please. So contribution limits, as we said. So there are new limits on campaign contributions for city candidates as well as political action committees. Again, we felt like this was really important. We saw the big money, and every year it gets larger and larger. So we're trying to address that through the limits. It does prohibit contributions to candidate committees from business entities and from labor unions. So we, you know, some of us get I got support from labor unions, but we're really trying to be consistent and walk the walk. So we were consistent with that. New comprehensive restrictions on the coordination between the campaigns and outside groups. Some of this is a little inside jargon, but that happens a lot in these elections. So we have much more restrictions on that. And then we also have a small donor committees that are established, have a maximum of $50 per year contribution. And again, we looked at what's happening in the state and the municipalities around us, so we're right in line with that. Next slide, please. Transparency and disclosure. This is something we're really passionate, and I think is one of the most important components of this legislation, is to be able to have residents be able to make an informed decision on who they're voting for, the support that candidates may have or may not have, and be able to dive in and look at that. So we have many more campaign finance reports. We used to just have a name, basically, and there wasn't any background to that. So we put more robust requirements for that. In terms of independent candidate campaigns, we had a lot of independent expenditures. So we have more requirements on disclosing for that. And as Owen mentioned before, like Lakewood is doing, the new disclaimer requirements for political advertising. So there's a lot of groups. I think there was a Aurorans for a Stronger Economy that was actually funded by oil and gas that put in some money, at least in 17, and Councilmember Mercano had a whole other level of intensity in 19, but there were no requirements like who's behind this, who's supporting this, and we need to have that information. So, and then also that the disclosure reports, before it was just a couple of months before the election, and we're gonna be able to do this starting from March, which is when a lot of people even start pulling their papers to file, and we'll be able to get that ahead of time, that information. So next slide, please. And then, like I said, the enforcement piece, we really didn't have any enforcement before. So we're gonna have more streamlined procedures for investigating. And I think it's really important to say, we're not trying to catch the innocent candidate or their volunteer treasurer who just missed some information. There's some leeway for that, but it's really actors who are acting in bad faith. And you know, and we can prove that. So we have penalties up to $10,000, because like I said, if it's a slap on the wrist or it's $50, that's not really going to prevent these penalties from happening. So to take this seriously, we really wanted to have a serious enforcement provision in the ordinance. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm actually going to talk about, if you don't mind, Owen, we were talking about before this information actually Owen gathered, so I feel like it's, to do it justice, I'm going to have Owen talk about it, but talking about how the limits would impact races if we don't have them or if we do. So Owen, do you mind digging into that?
Sure, yeah. So this is just really brief glimpse at, again, a district ward race last 2019 and how it would look different with the new regulations that would come into effect with this ordinance. So there are two candidates in this ward. One candidate was outspent roughly 2 to 1, 33,000 to about 58,000. Just as things were in 2019, total fundraising for these two different candidates. If you take just the limits, and just through the limits, you're going to see this next change, that we'd go down, change the geography here really. The first candidate goes from 33,000 down to 26,000. So you're losing about half the total money in this race through this ordinance. But the other candidate is going from 58,000 down to 18,000. So you actually have a reversal of fortunes, so to speak, as a result of taking out contributions that exceed those new limits. So no more $5,000 contributions, no more $500 contributions. I showed you just removing all that special interest money. But when you remove the individual money as well, you get a whole new landscape here. And it really, you can see that it does that goal of taking that emphasis on wealth out of the equation. That's not part of the math for democracy. Wealth is not supposed to figure in there. But when you put these, so that's just a really quick glimpse at the effect of it. And the whole idea, what we're really trying to get at is coming up with candidates and giving them a system where, they can focus on their constituents. They can spend their time in their neighborhoods, in the community they represent, talking and listening to those people, and depending on largely that community for the support they need to get elected. And they're able to invest all that time in the community when they can give up all that time that so many politicians have to spend now dialing for dollars, when they can stop reaching into the deep pockets and looking for people who have an agenda and are willing to pay for somebody to help them pursue that agenda. When that goes out, everything turns around. And as you saw, I can dramatically flip the conditions of that last race, change results, and change the way our legislators look and our elected officials look. So, in summary, these, when you put all these reforms together and you've got a good system running, you get some really valuable outcomes that anybody who cares about democracy should care about. You get increased voter turnout because now voters feel like they're not being dwarfed by big money and special interest. They're on a level playing field. Their $10 can be meaningful, can be just as meaningful as anybody else's contribution out there. Communities of color have become more engaged. We've seen that across the country as these reforms have taken effect, and across Colorado. Lower income communities are able to be involved as donors at a rate that they've never been in the past. Running for office, as I said, no longer means needing to have wealth or be connected to wealth. And the end result is that you get a more diverse group of candidates running and getting elected. And what we see time and time again is it adds up to more women, more young people, and more people of color running for office and getting elected. So that's what's behind these kind of reforms. It's a dual dual benefit of being able to trust your government again and feel like your government is representing you, but also having a legislature that looks like the community and really reflects the values of the community, reflects the public interest and not the special interest. So, we are, as Councilwoman Johnston said, coming up to progress in council. They just had the committee meeting where we got a favorable vote, and it's going to go to study session on tentatively September 21st, followed by a vote soon after that in council. So we'll keep you up to date. If you want to sign up with either of the council members who are here or with Clean Slate Now Action, on ways that you can make your voice heard, signing on as a co-sponsor, a community co-sponsor for the ordinance, inviting a spokesperson to come talk to your meeting or group, calling, emailing, talking to your elected officials, showing up at the town hall meetings like this, writing a letter to the editor, any kind of way that you can help get the word out. If you want to sign up, we'll make sure to keep you posted on those opportunities. And if you wanted to get in touch with me, that information is there at the bottom. But that D for P Aurora, as in Democracy for the People, Aurora, with that bit.ly address, that'll give you a volunteer option. And I think at this point, that's the summary of what everybody's been working on, Aurora. I really appreciate being able to participate, and I think want to turn it over to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Owen. Thanks for that overview. I do want to add that, just in case there's a question, I'll be proactive, is yes, we are tentatively scheduled to have this go before study session September 21st. And prior to that, we will have the staff report any fiscal impact to this. But like we said, with that new software program that is going to be implemented, it really is going to make it actually easier for candidates or their treasurers to implement and to reduce some of the staff time that is under the current system. But it's still obviously important if there's any fiscal note related to that, to be able to get that information, and that will be public as well. And I just also, let's see, hi Sue. I know we have Colorado State Representative, former State Representative Sue Ryden, who worked on these issues in the legislature, and she helped me run in 17 and saw this whole, I remember her saying, I cannot believe that Aurora doesn't have any limits and doesn't have standards. So a lot of you have seen that over the years as you've been involved. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to look at the chat questions and address any of that. And then I know everyone is still muted. I appreciate that. I think we have, after that, we'll take questions, just, talking and through the video. So let me see. We had the question, and it was answered, about the appeals process, like we said, for that accountability piece. If there's any intentional, not reporting and preventing that from happening. And there is an appeals process, and like we said, that's really for actors acting in bad faith, and there's leeway for candidates and treasurers who make honest mistakes. And we got a question about dark money, which we talked a little bit about in terms of the why in the beginning. And there's a couple ways. We may talk about dark money that's currently happening, which it is, and we're trying, and I'll have to say, I recognize that, sometimes when you have some protections or restrictions, that then there's creative ways to try to go around it. This is ideally a part one in the overall reform. The cities that have had to really effectively tackle dark money have had a public financing component to eliminate PACs and dark money. This does not address it, and I'll just speak for myself. we're in some challenging times right now, financially, but we may still be, exploring that issue. But I think it's important, and I don't want to speak for Councilmember Marcano, but that we see this as kind of a first step. And dark money will, I think, be more effectively addressed with maybe some of those options of public financing. I don't know if anyone else wants to add in, at least with what we currently are working with. Yes, Councilmember Marcano?
Yeah, sure. I agree with the concerns around dark money. That is something that we do want to address. We, I think, agreed to do that separately, just, because we are facing challenging times, and we think that this basically is like the body of the reform, if you will, and we can add on to it with a public match component. Owen and I have talked a little bit about that, and I think Councilmember Johnston was actually involved in that conversation as well. And if we wanted to do something that would scale for Aurora, it would be basically 0.0014% of our general fund. So, I mean, it's a really small amount. It's $500,000 basically a year, but we are facing some challenging times, so I do want to be, respectful of that as well. But, speaking for myself, I don't think you can put a price tag on a healthy and functioning democracy. And I think that is a very small price to pay to get ahead of what we know is likely to happen, which is if we are successful to pass this, we're going to probably see an increase in dark money. And while there is definitely a strong narrative that you could make that, these, folks who mostly benefit from dark money don't necessarily have popular support, it is still effective and it still buys votes basically. So I think that getting ahead of that through a proactive public match would be great, but that's a different topic for a different day.
Yeah, and I'm just going to quick add, and then Owen, I think what we can do right now, because dark money is going to happen, as is status quo, and I will own it can happen under this too. It's the disclosure piece. It's the transparency. We might not be able to stop the dark money, but we can have requirements in place for reporting, and then have people be able to make some more informed decisions from that. Owen, would you like to add?
Yeah, actually, that was the point I was going to make. So I'll just echo that that shining the light on dark money is a huge way of cleansing ourselves from it. It's not everything, but it is effective. Disclosing it, getting it out in the open, making it not dark anymore. And, there are numerous components of this bill that make people accountable for showing where the money's coming from. And you see in recent elections, when people see where money is coming from, it changes the way they vote. And when they see, I don't think I can mention anything that isn't controversial, but if you're, I don't know, if you're got a stance on oil and gas, and you see one of the two candidates is backed by lots of money from oil and gas, and another candidate is backed by supporters who oppose oil and gas, I mean, that has an effect on voters when they see special interests lining up behind a certain candidate. It raises their eyebrows. It increases their scrutiny. The electorate is becoming increasingly educated and increasingly more aggressive about educating themselves. And so showing where the money is coming from often counteracts the effect that the money is meant to have in the first place. And you see more and more candidates who are outspent by special interests, but are still able to win at the polls by shining a light on where that money is coming from.
Yeah, I think that shining the light on contributions to candidate committees is going to some extent, drive money to independent expenditure committees. It's going to be a little bit like the whack-a-mole game at the carnival, but at least we will have pushed it back some. There's a question here from John Barber about the use of a candidate's own money. This would not restrict the candidate's use of his or her own money. I wasn't wild about the way one candidate in Colorado's last gubernatorial election largely financed himself, but that does eliminate the appearance of corruption. I mean, at least you know if he's spending or she is spending their own money, they're not being influenced by some secret, difficult to detect donor.
But I should add, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, while there's no restrictions on that, there still are requirements on disclosing expenditures. So, you know, even if when someone can self-fund, because we had this discussion and we had it in our election commission, and sorry about that. And one of the questions was like, well, if they can self-fund, they should just don't even have to file a report. And we felt it was really important. They can self-fund, but just like the other candidates, there is a running total of where the money is being spent. Yes, Owen?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that has also had an effect. Right now, when you see two candidates and one's raised 100,000 and one's raised 50,000, you think, well, that candidate with 100,000 has got a lot of support. I should probably give that candidate a pretty close look, and maybe I should be a supporter. And if you can show, as you will be with these reforms, that $100,000 all comes from that candidate's own pocket, that flips people's opinion about the level of support this candidate has. They're no longer somebody who's showing the ability to get a whole lot of support. They're somebody who's showing a big pocket. The one way that we have seen people, you know, dealing with the constitutional requirement to allow candidates to contribute unlimited amount to their own campaigns is when you have an opt-in system. And public finance systems often have an opt-in system where if a candidate opts in, they accept certain regulations that they wouldn't be required to accept unless they choose to do that voluntarily. And one of those is regarding self-financing. When Denver passed something with public financing, they said if a candidate is going to opt in and get public financing, then they have to respect the same personal contribution limits as any other person has to. So they can't self-finance their campaign and take public finance.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's talk about PACs if we can. We have a question from Sonia about, please describe the limitation this would place on PACs, political action committees, and the requirements for disclosure. So, and then she talks about, you know, the difficulty with disclosing that at the federal and state level and how we would do this on the local level.
It's a good question if I can jump in.
Sure.
And, you know, there are two kinds of PACs that we hear about: PACs, which are political action committees, and the super PACs. And they're really two different universes. The most PACs, and it's an important distinction, because while we're saying businesses can't contribute under the new ordinance, that doesn't keep a business from setting up a PAC, setting up a political action committee that is separate from their operating expense, setting that up to engage in politics and make contributions to candidates. But if they make contributions to candidates, they would be subject to the same limitations as any individual or any other contributor. So if the limit were, you know, $250, it would be the same for an individual, for a PAC. And the only exception is Councilmember Johnston mentioned small donor committees. Those are committees made up of individuals contributing a maximum of $50 a year to a small donor committee fund. And because that's individual money and it's limited to $50 a year, they can use that money together, and those limits are higher. They can give, you know, if it was $250 for an individual donation, it would typically be 10 times that for a small donor committee, so $2,500. And that all mirrors what we see at the state level and the federal level at play in Colorado.
I just,
Coming down.
Sonia.
sorry. Hi.
Hi.
I just would like to follow up. Thank you for your excellent work at the state level and Nicole and Juan at the council level. I'm so impressed and inspired. That's wonderful. You've made such good progress. But I'm still mystified about PACs, why it is that we can do this at the local level, yet at the state and federal level, there doesn't seem to be any traction, or there seem to be obstacles to do that other than just big money obstacles.
Well, and to clarify really quickly, we are actually catching up to the state and federal level with these proposals. The state level does not allow businesses to contribute, but PACs can contribute, and the federal level does not allow business and interests to contribute, but PACs can contribute. So we're catching up to that by banning corporate donations and business entity donations and union labor donations. But the super PACs is that other category, and that's where Citizens United allowed that unlimited spending from super PACs as long as they are not affiliated with the candidate campaign. So that's where this idea of an independent expenditure group comes in, and there's supposedly no communication, no collaboration at all, no collusion, whatever, anything between an independent expenditure committee and a candidate committee. What we see time and time again is that that's a line that gets blurred, and a law that gets broken by PACs, super PACs actually interacting with the candidate who they're supporting when they're not supposed to be able to do that legally.
Thank you. Yes, Sonia.
Sorry, I just had one more question. Can you explain what the disclosure requirements would be for PACs? Because trying to untangle who's giving what and which independent group, who the heck they are, has been impossible in the past. If you could just explain a little bit how this ordinance will begin to shine some sunlight on that.
I'm trying to unmute. Sorry about that. I was actually gonna put Dale a little on the spot because he had had some ideas behind this. And unfortunately, Dale, I do not have the ordinance right in front of me on that section. Do either of you, I know I should, but I'm scrolling through, know about that disclosure piece, and I can also, follow up and send it in an email. I'm just looking for the actual language, so I give the most accurate information.
I'm looking for it. Sorry, hang on.
Okay. Thanks. Sonia, do you mind if we circle back? I take another question and we'll answer that. I know you're muted, but I'm going to, we'll answer it in the next couple minutes. I do want to just.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I'm sorry I just want to make sure it's accurate, and I don't have that right. I'm kind of multitasked with the different screens. But we have the question about the best guess in passing this. As many of you know, we have 10 people on council and we have a mayor. The mayor votes when there is a tie. So we need 6 votes. And I like to remind people that each resident directly has 5 people representing them. You have your council ward member, and then you have 4 at-large members. So I've talked to the majority of the council members at large are open to this. There are some concerns on limits, specifically having the same limit for a council member race as an at-large race, because it's obviously a larger territory, and there's concern we need to cover more territory and area for that. But we feel it's important to be flexible, and we're opening. I have not heard numbers specifically, but Councilmember Marcano and I are open to meeting with our colleagues. I'm feeling optimistic, but we need help from folks to contact all council, but just specifically your ward council member and your at large, I think are really important that this is something that is a priority. Councilmember Marcano, did you want to add anything?
Yeah.
To the likelihood? Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also feeling pretty confident. I think the campaign limits are probably going to be the major point of contention. I don't think it was called out in the presentation, but the current ordinance starts at 320 per race, and the rationale for that is based off of the state limits. The state house district is about 80%. I'm sorry, our council wards are about 80%, give or take, the population of a state house district. State house districts are a $400 contribution, which is the same percent of districts. So we figured 320 makes sense based off of that ratio. But I think that some of our at-large colleagues might be a little concerned because they feel, that might be a heavier lift. And, happy to have that conversation with them. I think we have a strong argument for why it should be that, but we'll see how it turns out.
And can't emphasize enough how much a move it would be to go from unlimited contributions to something in the range that we're talking about here, from 320, three-digit levels instead of 5 or 6 digit levels, and that range that it's going to land in, that where it's proposed, the 320, and any range that I can conceive that it ending up at is going to be a range that's consistent with what the state has in place right now and with what municipalities who are enacting reforms are putting into place. So there is kind of a consensus, unwritten consensus, that seems to be building among the population of what's an appropriate amount for Colorado. And I think we'll be in that range when everything ends up.
Yes,
As we
Dale.
get down to the final few minutes here,
Yes.
I want to bring up one objection that some people, or concern that some people have mentioned, and that's how the Citizens United decision impacts all this. And we have with us this evening Austin Graham, who's an attorney with the Campaign Legal Center, and he's been an enormous help in drafting the latter versions of this proposed ordinance. And I wonder if Austin could say a few things about Citizens United and what we've proposed here.
And also, I'm going to put you on the spot, Austin. Were you hearing, since you wrote this section on the PAC disclosures?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with PAC disclosure because
Okay, this is for you, Sonia.
So under the ordinance, if you qualify as an Aurora PAC, you have to register with the city clerk and you file a regular series of reports. And on those reports, you have to disclose every single contribution you've received, as well as every single expenditure you've made and information about any debts or loans the committee has outstanding. And that set of rules applies to any PAC, including super PACs. So even if you do have like a corporate funded super PAC, you will have total disclosure about its immediate contributors and donors. So tons of transparency being added with that element here. But then in terms of Citizens United, everything in the ordinance is compliant with what that case requires. There's no restrictions on any person or corporation's ability to make independent expenditures. And this has been talked about a little bit by some of the prior speakers, but an independent expenditure is any payment for an election ad that is not legally coordinated with a candidate, meaning there's not cooperation or sort of collaboration on the behalf of the candidate's campaign with that independent spender. So while that has to be allowed because of Citizens United, what this ordinance would do is require that groups that spend over $1,000 on independent expenditures, even if they don't qualify as a PAC in Aurora, they still have to disclose all of their donors above $1,000. So, it doesn't necessarily solve every iteration of the dark money problem, but it still adds a lot more transparency when you have non-PAC, what are commonly thought of as dark money groups, come into Aurora and try to spend money on election ads.
Thank you, Austin. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. We're a little past 7:30. I hope this is the beginning of some excitement to get this passed. We really need Aurora voices. Can always email citycouncil@auroragov.org. Like I said, we're presenting this to the full city council in September. But if this is important to you and you see the big picture on how this influences other important policies that you want to see us take on, and to also encourage all sorts of people to be able to run for office. Like we said, it shouldn't just take people with lots of money to be able to run. So we have the let's see, I'm trying to think, the emails. I know that their Clean Slate Action Now has a list. You can email myself. I'm on the website, Councilmember Marcano. We have a draft of the actual legislation if you want to get into the nuts and bolts. We do have an executive summary on Clean Slate. Is it cleanslatenowaction.org,
Yeah.
Owen, for
Yeah.
the website? You can go on there and get an executive summary, and we'd love for you to keep following. And any questions, any suggestions, like we said, we're still in the draft stage, but we're getting closer. Please reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and thank you again, Councilmember Marcano, Sue Ryden, for joining us, the folks from our coalition have been bringing this together, our residents. I know my Ward 2 constituents that have joined the call. So thank you. I appreciate you all being here, and we'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to know why your dog is so unenthusiastic about this.
We give our dogs like 3 walks a day. So they're like, please get out of the house and go back to work, so you're not walking me all the time. I love your laugh, Everett. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Great meeting, Nicole.
Thanks, Everett. Talk to y'all soon.